Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is our 27th lecture of Formal Methods for Software Engineering, and I am Fakhr Lodi with you. In the previous lecture, we started to discuss the specification of a filing system using algebraic specifications. So what we were doing was that, in order to build the specification of a complex system, we showed how to actually divide the system into smaller subcomponents, then specify those components, and with the help of those smaller components build the bigger system or specification for a more complex system. So in that context, we saw several smaller specifications that included the specification of a Boolean and a list and a pair and a quad and a bimap. And today we shall use these specifications that we developed in the previous lectures. We shall use these specifications to write down the specification for this filing system. So this is the ultimate objective of this exercise that we are doing here. So let us first have a look at the structure of that algebraic system and see how we used or how do we intend to use these different specifications that we developed earlier on. How would they be used in this specification? Although we have seen this in the previous lectures also, but I would like to start from there so that we have the context in view, so that we know what we are doing. So let us look at this slide once again and see what are the different components. Here is the structure of the file system specification. We started with this Boolean. The Boolean is used in list, pair and quad, as well as it is going to be used in the specification for this filing system. This list and pair, they were used to build the specification of this bimap, and ultimately all of these, that is Boolean, list, pair, bimap and quad, will be used inside the specification of this filing system. So this is, the general structure of the specification. Remember, in our filing system, we said the system is composed of regions where each region has three components. It has a region ID, region header, and a link to the files contains within that region. The file within each region has once again three sections: the file ID, the file header, and once again a link to the documents that this file contains. The document once again has three components: the document ID, the document header, and the text contained within the document, or link to the text contained within the document. We can add a region into the system. When we do that, it will create a region and it will give us a region ID back. We can add a file inside the region with the same kind of effect back, that is, we get a file ID back. We can add a document inside a file and we get a document ID back. Inside the system, we can list regions, which will give us a pair of region IDs and region headers, all the regions that are contained inside the system. Within each region, we can list files, and we will get a file ID, a file header of all the files which are included in the region, which are contained by the region. And we can also list documents inside a file, which will give us the document ID and document header of all the files that we have inside, all the documents inside a file. So what we have here is a uniform structure for all these different entities that we have in our filing system. We have the region ID, region header, and the link to the files. So 3 components for the region. Once again, 3 components for the file ID, file header, and the link to the documents. Document ID, document header, and link to the text. The structure itself is uniform, although each component inside the structure may have a different type. So types for region and the file and the document, the different components that it has, files of those, the types of those components may be totally different. But from an abstract point of view, they have a uniform structure. So we shall be using this structure, and I want you to keep this structure in mind. I will be referring back to this structure again and again and show you what will happen when we take certain action. Before I start discussing the specification of the filing system, let me go back and show you the signature parts of the specifications that we developed earlier on, without going into the axioms, but just this signature, so that we remember what was inside those specifications and what those different operations were supposed to do, and then we shall be using those definitions inside the filing systems. So let us go back to the slide and review once again the signature part of the different specifications that we developed earlier on. First of all, we have the signature for the pair. We have 4 operations here. The first, which takes a pair and gives us the first component of the pair. The second, which takes a pair and gives us the second component of the pair. Pair, which takes 2 components, A and B, and makes a pair out of these 2 components. And equality, which takes 2 components, 2 pairs, and returns a Boolean back, telling us whether the pairs are equal or not. Then we have the specification of the quad. Once again, very, very similar to the specification of the pair, but this time we have 4 components instead of the 2 components that we had in the case of a pair. So the operations that we have, the first operation is the first, which gives us the first component of a quad. The second operation is second, which takes a quad and gives us the second component. The third is the third, which takes us the quad and gives us the third component. And fourth takes a quad and gives us the fourth component of the quad. The quad constructor itself takes 4 components, A, B, C, and D, and gives us the quad itself. And once again, we have the equality for the quads. So it takes 2 quads and tells us whether they are equal or not. We have the list that we have seen earlier on, but once again, I would just very briefly go over the signature part. The first of list takes the list and gives the first element at the top of the list. The rest of the list takes the list and gives us a list back after chopping the first element from the list. Is undef tells us whether the list is defined or not. This dot takes an element and a list and adds the element to the front of the list and gives the list back. The member of function takes an element and a list and tells us whether this element is a member of the list or not. Equality takes 2 lists and tells us whether 2 lists are equal or not. At end takes a list and tells us whether the list is empty or not. So these specifications, these were the simple specifications that we saw, that is the specification of a list, specification of a pair, and specification of a quad. There is nothing very significant about these specifications. We have seen those specifications earlier on. These are very simple specifications, and I just wanted you to remember these specifications because we are going to use these specifications in the filing system. The next specification was a little bit more complex specification, and that was the specification of a bimap. This bimap basically is something that gives us the structure for different components that we have in our system. The different components that I just showed you earlier, they were the region, the files, and the documents. And each region has three components: region ID, region header, and a link to the files. And a file has, once again, three components: the file ID, file header, and the link to the documents. Document, once again, has the similar kind of structure: document ID, document header, and link to the text. So this bimap gives us these structures. So it takes three components. It has three components: the source, target 1, and target 2. What are the types of source in target 1 and target 2? We are not really concerned about that at this moment. But it takes these or three components of any type for which certain properties are defined that we saw earlier on, and then it kind of puts them together in a tuple, and then we can use that tuple. So the bimap is the most important component in the specification of our filing system, because the filing system essentially is composed of bimaps of bimaps. So we have regions inside a filing system. So we have bimaps in the filing system. Those regions, they point to files, which once again are bimaps. Those files which point to documents, which once again are bimaps. So we have bimaps of bimaps of bimaps, and that is what our system is. So it is kind of a tree structure that we are generating, but this tree structure has, each node of the tree has these three different components. So let us now once again go back onto the slide and look at the signature part of the bimap before we can start talking about the filing system. So the bimap, it uses Boolean, and it has two instances of pair and two instances of list. So we have pair 1 and pair 2, and list 1 and list 2. Pair 1 gives us a pair of source and target 1. So, we take a bimap, and, from a bimap we will get source and target 1. From pair 2, that will give us a pair of source and target 2s from the bimap. List 1 will create a list of pair 1s, and list 2 will create a list of pair 2. Now coming to the signature part, we have the if then else defined for the bimap. There are three different versions of if then else. In the first version, we have a Boolean bimap, and it takes and returns a bimap back. In the second case, we have a Boolean target 1, and it returns the target 1 back. And in the third version, we have Boolean target 2, and it gives target 2 back. So the only difference really is in the type of the arguments. In the first case, we have the first as Boolean, and the rest of the three arguments are bimaps. In the second case, we have first Boolean argument, and then rest of the three are target 1s. And in the third case, the first one is Boolean, and the rest of the three are target 2s. Then we have the equality, which takes two bimaps and gives us a Boolean result back, telling us whether the two bimaps are equal or not. Then we have a bimap constructor. It takes three components: source, target 1, and target 2, and a bimap, and adds this tuple that we just saw, tuple of source, target 1, and target 2. It adds to the old bimap and gives us a new modified bimap back. Then we have the editor functions, two editor functions. These editor functions, they take a bimap, a source. So bimap and source, this is, they search for that source in this bimap, and then there is this target one. So once the source is found in that bimap, the target one that we had there is replaced by the target one, which is being supplied here in this function. And the second editor function, the only difference is now we have target 2. So it replaces the old target 2 with the new target 2 and gives us the updated bimap back. Then we have the retrieve one function, which takes a bimap and a source and gives us the corresponding target 1 back. The retrieve 2 function takes a bimap and the source and gives us the corresponding target 2 back. List 1 takes a bimap and gives us the list 1, that is pair 1. Pair 1 would be source and target 1s. And list 2 takes bimap and once again generates a list 2, which is pair of source and target 2s. So what we have seen here is, once again, the same specification that we saw earlier on. दो चीज़ें इसमें याद रखने की हैं कि we are using two instances of pair and two instances of list, pair 1 and pair 2, list 1 and list 2 in our bimap specification. And then there are different functions, different operations that we perform on a bimap, and those operations give us different things. The important operations that we need to remember are the ones that we use to construct a bimap. So adding a new tuple with source, target 1 and target 2, adding it to an existing bimap, it will just add there, and the bimap now will have one additional tuple there. So we have a collection of bimaps. So we could have a list of regions, a collection of regions inside the system. So this is how we will do it. Similarly, we have a collection of documents inside a file, files inside a region. So ये सारी की सारी ये bimap creation के ज़रिए जो add a new bimap, or in that particular case, अगर हमारा वो region है तो we will be adding a region, or we will be adding a file, or we will be adding a document into the system. Then we have the editor functions. So we may want to change a bimap, change certain component of the bimap. So we may change the header part, or we may change the link part. So this is the two editor functions. This is what they give us. That is, I can either change the target 1 or I can change target 2. And then we have the lists, which will generate list 1 and list 2 given a bimap. And then we have retrieves, which will give us target 1 and target 2 given a bimap and a source. So if we go back to our original structure, let us see what will happen when we apply different functions. When I want to add a region here, what I need is I need a tuple with 3 components, the region header and a link to the region. This may be empty initially. This is generated when I add a region there. So I need to supply this region header probably. And I have these 3 components, that is my tuple, and I will be adding that to my already existing collection of regions. So a new region would be added. So this is my bimap. This whole collection is my bimap, and this is the new region that is added to that bimap. Similarly, add file and add document, they work in the similar domain. Now we have this list operation. This list operation gives us a pair of region ID and region header. So this is the first two components. So this is actually my list 1, and list 1 will give me a list of all the regions, their region IDs and region headers. If I want to take the second component with this, and I want to go to this file, I will need to take these two components. So this will be pair 2 that I have. Pair 2 gives me the source and target 2. So this is source, target 1, target 2. So I get the source and target 2. This will give me the pair for that, and for that pair I will get whatever I wanted to do. So these are the different functions that I have. I have these three components. I say retrieve 1. So I give this system, that is the bimap, and then I give the source. This is the source, and pair 1 will give me this component for that particular source. Retrieve 1 will give me this component, that is target 1, for this particular source. Retrieve 2 will give me this component that will be a link to the next level of entities, so on and so forth. So with the help of these functions, I will be able to decompose the information given here and then use that information in my specification of the filing system. So what we have seen here is, once again, with the help of those operations that we have defined on a bimap, we will be taking different components of the bimap, the components that we need, and we will be using those components in other specifications. And also, we can create a new tuple and add that tuple into the bimap. We can give a source and take the corresponding target 1, take the corresponding target 2, take a pair of source and target 1 or target 2s, whatever we want. So all possible combinations that we can have, these operations they provide us, and these will be used in our further specifications. So once we have that, let us go back to the slide, and once again now we start looking at the specification of the filing system. So here is the specification of the filing system. I have as a parameter to this specification a pattern, region header, doc header, file header. So these are the 4 parameters that I will have inside this file system, and I need to have a method specified on these. So that method is match, which takes the file header and the pattern and tells me the pattern is present in that file header or not. And then I have this text for which undefined is declared there. Undefined is present. So if the text is not defined, I should be able to specify. I should be able to tell somehow. In this particular case, we are defining 3 sorts. So it is not just one sort that we are defining here. So once again, something new. We have not seen this before. Previously, in one specification, we have been specifying only one sort at a time. Now we have 3 sorts. And these 3 sorts are region ID, file ID, and doc ID. So once again, as I mentioned here, this is something new. In algebraic specifications, when we have a specification, one specification can contain the specification for many sorts. So it is not limited to one sort at a time or one sort per specification. In this system, there were three structures that we were using. The three structures were the region, the file, and the document. So we have the bimap for region, we have the bimap for files, and we have the bimap for documents. So what we are going to do is, we are going to define the three structures, and for each structure corresponds to a sort. So we are going to define all these three simultaneously, within one specification. Now, let us go back onto the slide and, look at it in more detail. So once again, in this specification, we are using something similar to what we used in the case of bimap. That is, we are going to have multiple instances of one specification within this specification. So we have three instances of bimaps. The three instances of file are file, region, and system. So file takes doc ID, doc header, and text, and it creates a bimap out of that. Region takes file ID, file header, and file, and it creates a bimap of that. And system is a bimap of regions, so it takes region ID, region header, and region. So what we have here is three instances of bimap. So once again, ये बिल्कुल वैसी ही चीज है जो हम bimap में already देख चुके हैं, जहां पर we had two instances of list and pair each, and in this particular case we have three instances of bimap, and these three instances, as you can see, they correspond to the three different structures that we have. That is the structure for region, the structure for file, and structure for document. We have similar instances for other things also. So what are those? Let us look at it. Then we have three instances of list: doc info, file info, and region info. Doc info is a list of pair of doc ID and doc header. File info is a list of pair of file ID and file header. And region info is a list of pair of region ID and region header. So once again, you saw that we had three instances of lists, and we have those lists of pairs. ये list of pairs वही हैं जो हम इससे पहले देख चुके हैं कि जब हम कहते हैं कि list of regions हमें generate करनी है, so हम system को कहते हैं give me the list of regions that you have, and it gives us a list of pairs which are list of regions composing of region ID and region header. Similarly, we have the list of files within a region which has file IDs and file headers, and list of documents inside a region which has the document ID and document header. So ये उसी तरीके से है, हमने पेयर बना के और उनकी लिस्ट बना ली, and we need to have that, as that was one of the requirements of our system. Now we have pad doc, which is basically a temporary document which contains the text corresponding to a document. If we make a pair of document header and the corresponding text and call it pad doc, so it is a document pad. And then we have the search list, which is a list of quads of region IDs, file IDs, document IDs, and document header. So in the last two cases, the signatures are for actually, the objects that we have here. There are two objects. One is a document pad doc, on which we put our text for editing or whatever. So it is a pair of the document header and the corresponding text. And the last one is the search list. In our system, we have three main components: the regions, the files, the documents. So we want to search for a key or a pattern inside a document header. So the fourth thing that we need to have is the document header itself. So what we say, okay, starting from this system, go to this region, within this region go to this file, within this file go to this document, and take the document header and then make a search list of this. So what happens is that, what we are doing is, we are taking these four components and we are making a list out of these four components. And, when we search for a key, we will search through this list, and then, we will find the corresponding document that has the pattern defined inside the document header for that. So we may have more than one documents for which this pattern is, in which this pattern is present. But, we are, for the time being, we are just creating this search list. Now let us look at the signature part of this filing system specification. We have obviously the three make functions: make region ID, make file ID, and make doc ID. So region ID takes the system and gives us a new unique region ID back. So, we say add a new region into the system. It creates a new region with a new region ID. Similarly, we say create a new file inside the system, make file ID. So we give it a region and it returns a file ID back. And make doc ID is very similar. It takes a file and gives us the doc ID back. Then we say add region, add file, and add doc. Add region takes the system and the region header and adds that region into the system. Add file will take a system, region ID, and the file header and will add that into the system. And add doc will take the system, region ID, file ID, and the doc header and the corresponding text now also, and will add that into the system. Now we have, these 6 operations. The 3 make IDs, make region ID, make file ID, make doc ID, and the 3 add operations, that is add region, add file, and add doc. They will probably be using each other, and we shall see that when we look at the axioms part. So, but basically what they are giving us is, in the first case, they are giving us a unique ID for the corresponding entity, be it a region, be it a file, or a document. And in the second case, we say add this particular entity into the system with this context. So if we are adding a file, the context is the system and the region itself in which we want to add the file. If it is a document, the context is going to be the system, the region, and the file in which we need to add the document. The entire hierarchy, we are also, in the third case, we are also adding text to it, and we are saying, okay, this is the text that we want to add to this document. So the structure is very similar. The only thing is that we are adding context and context is added as we move down in the hierarchy. At the top level, the context is only the system. When we go to the file level, the context is region and the system. At the document level, the context is file, region, and the system itself. So the only thing that we are adding in these are the context information. The rest of the information is very, very similar and intuitive. Then we have list regions, list files, and list docs. List regions, given a system, it gives us the region info, and region info is the region ID and region header. The list file is system and region ID, and it gives us the file info. And list docs is the system, region ID, and file ID, and it gives us the doc info. Once again, in this particular case, as we are moving in the hierarchy, the only thing that we are adding is we are adding the context. At the top level, we are just giving the system. In the next level, we are giving the system and the region for which the files are to be listed, and so on and so forth. And note one thing here. In this particular case, what we are getting back are the instances that we declared earlier on in the uses section of the specification. The region info. What was region info? Region info was a list of pairs of region ID and region header. File info is a list of pairs of file ID and file header. And doc info is the list of docs of document ID and list of pairs of document ID and document header. So these are the lists that we are generating, and we have given the specification of those lists, what is meant by those lists. So when we say we will get region info, it means the list of region IDs and region headers that we have declared earlier on, and so on and so forth. Then we have get docs and search. Get docs takes the region, system, region ID, file ID, and doc ID, and it gives us the pad doc back. And the search takes a system and a pattern and gives us a search list back. So these are the final two operations. In the first case, we get a pad doc back. Pad doc is the document header and the corresponding text. And in the second case, we give it a pattern and it gives us the list of documents which contains that pattern. So it gives us the list back. So this is the signature part of this filing system. The first axiom that we have is list regions S, and that is equal to list 1 of S. Here we have our first axiom. And what we are doing is a very straightforward kind of specification. What we are saying is we have a list of regions from the system. It takes the system S as a parameter and gives us a list 1. What is list 1? List 1 is list of pair 1s. So here we have the regions. So when we say list regions for this system, this is the operation that we are performing. This is what we get. Pair 1 is these two components of this tuple, and we have a list of all the pair 1s here. The second operation is going to be list files inside the region. So in this particular case, it takes two arguments, remember. It takes the system as well as the region ID. So what do we need to do in this particular case? Let us look at the specification, and then I'll explain that specification for you. So here is the slide. So list files takes S and RID. S is the system and RID is the region ID, is equal to list 1 of retrieve 2 S, RID. So file ID हमें कैसे मिलता है? what we do is, we have the system and the region. So retrieve to gives us what? Retrieve to gives us the source and target 2. So given the source, given the bimap, given the system, given the bimap here, we have the source and target 2, which is the collection of files inside the region. So we are here now. And at this point, we apply list 1 onto this, and that gives us the list of the file info, list of file IDs and file header. So retrieve to will take this component, these two components, and will take us to this point. We get a set of bimaps. Here we apply list 1 onto that, and we get file info out of that. Now let us look at what do we need to do in the case of when we get list of documents. Once again, in this particular case, we will get the 3 components. The 3 parameters are the system, the region, and the file. So what do we need to do in this particular case? Once again, it will be very, very similar to what we did in the case of files, but now it is going to be, we are going to have one more level there. So let us go back and look at the specification, and then I'll explain it to you. So list doc takes 3 arguments, S, RID, and FID, and is equal to list 1 of retrieve 2 of S, RID, FID. So here, once again, what we have seen is that, we start from the top. From top, we go to the region after taking the retrieve to region ID and the third component. From there, we go to the files. Once again, do the retrieve to, and that will take us to the documents. And at that point, we apply the list 1 operation, which gives us the document info, that is the document headers and the document IDs for the files that we have. Okay, so once again, number of levels, but the specification is very, very similar to what we saw earlier on. Now we have the add region. Add region is S, A header is equal to the tuple, which is make region ID S, A header, undef star S. So what we do here is, in this particular case, we apply the constructor function for the bimap, and the tuple is, we make a region ID, region header, and, there is an undefined component because the link to the files for that new region is not there. There are no files to be added, but we add this new tuple, we create this tuple and add it to our system, and we will have a new region added to our system. Then we have add file. Add file takes 3 arguments, S, RID, A header, and is equal to, now we apply this function because we are changing the list to the region. So we use the editor function, and that is we are changing the target to. So we have this S, RID, left arrow, and then we have the constructor for the bimap, which is make file ID, retrieve to, which gives us S, RID, which gives us the region, and the list, that list of files for that region, A header, undef, star, retrieve to, S, RID. So what we are doing here is we are taking the list of files for that particular region. We are adding this new file into that region, and then we are adding that new into this bimap, and that is creating this new bimap, and then that is replaced. So we are replacing this target with the old target, the list with the old list. So this is how we add file into the system. Add doc is very, very similar, but in this particular case, we have now two editor functions. Since when we add, we are going to change the target 2 for the files, because that list is going to change, and we are also, since that changes, it means that we are going to change the target 2 for region also, so that is going to have a new region. The rest is a very, very similar specification, and you can look at it and see how it works. Then we have getDoc, which takes 4 arguments, s, rid, fid, did, and it creates a pair of retrieve1 and retrieve2 of, first of all, retrieve2 of s, rid, fid, did, and then the second component of the pair is retrieve2 of s, rid, fid, did. So we are creating this pair out of this. So what we have is, we have the document header. In the first case, we have the retrieve1. The second component is retrieve2. So in the first case, we get the first component, target1 back. In the second case, we get target2 back, and we are making a pair out of it, and that is what we get. That is the document header and the corresponding text that we have. And finally, we have the quad that is used for the search. So we have the quad rid, fid, did, x, which is the pattern that we are searching for, and we say, is it a member of s, pattern? So x is the text, and s and p is the pattern, s is the system. And we once again use a very similar recursive definition that gives us this information. So what we have seen is that, with the help of those specifications that we built earlier on, we specified the behavior of this filing system, which is quite a complex entity. It is not a very simple, straightforward thing. But क्योंकि हमने छोटी छोटी specifications पहले build कर ली थी, तो उन specifications को use करते हुए हमने ये बड़ी specification लिख दी, और जब हम इस level तक पहुंचे, तो the specification itself was straightforward and trivial. उसमें कोई खास बात नहीं रह गई थी, because सारे का सारा इससे पहले हम काम जो पिछली specifications में खास तौर पे BIMAP की specification में हम कर चुके थे. So this is how we build specification for complex systems. अगले lecture में I will show you the tools that we have for algebraic specifications, and we shall start discussing one of those tools. उस वक्त तक के लिए आप मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए. अगले lecture में इंशाल्लाह फिर मिलते हैं. खुदा हाफिज़ और अस्सलाम वालेकुम.